Hi everyone, in today's video I'm going to answer one of the most common questions that we get asked. What does Sarros Landscaping do? So I'm going to walk you through a large project that captures the majority of the services that we provide. With that, let's get started. For starters, I want you to pay attention when you see a work truck driving down the road at the bullet points that they have on their truck. It's generally a good indication of what services you can expect. At Sarros Landscaping, you can see that we provide our own design and installation of the work that we've designed. We do pavers and retaining walls. We do drainage and erosion control. We do overall general landscaping of your yard, softscapes, new lawns, yard cleanups, as well as irrigation. And one of our niche services and one of the favorite things that we do is artificial turf. If you're looking for a putting green, if you're looking for a low maintenance yard, if you've struggled for years to have sod grow on your property, if you have drainage issues, if you have a lot of pets, if you're operating or owning or managing a kennel or a daycare or a school or a preschool, these are great applications for artificial turf. If you're an avid golfer, that's a great application to have your own putting green in your backyard. So in addition to the artificial turf, we provide a whole host of outdoor services. But what do these outdoor services look like when they're actually installed on your property? And that's why I'm here today at this property just off Lake Lanier. It's a second home for a great client of ours. And I want to show you what we've done on this project. This project is now about 3 years old. When we first started here, this was just a complete overgrown jungle of stuff. So we removed a lot of trees. We created a nice central island. You'll see within the island that we have quite a bit of landscape lighting. So at night, this place just pops. It looks amazingly beautiful at nighttime. There were some drainage issues that we had to address while we were on the project. And that's typical with every job we do. In fact, that's the number one thing that we look at. We know that regardless of how beautiful things look when they are finished, the drainage has to function correctly. So we have a large drain basin at the low point in the driveway. We've surrounded it with a really nice ruble that stood. Ruble stone is what you're looking at. That's what this is called. This is Tennessee ruble stone. So ruble just means that it's a long rectangular stone. They're great we build walls out of them, we do garden borders out of them, but in this application we stood them on end and secured them with a decorative mortar so they can serve as a barrier to water continuing to rush off onto the lawn. And as you can see, they serve their purpose. Any water that hits this ruble stone will run down here and it's directed into this large drain basin. This is a 24-inch by, that's an 18-inch by 18-inch drain basin. And that system is on a 6-inch pipe that goes all the way to the back of the property. When we arrived at this property, this project was nothing but a steep sloped hillside. So we installed a beautiful stacked stone retaining wall. We removed a tree that was in this area, and you can see the masonry work on this wall is just gorgeous, and I love the turn of it. I mean, one of my favorite features of this wall is the fact that it has like this nice organic serpentine or S-shaped curve to it. Here's an example of the stacked stonework that you can see on this wall. Each of these stones are individually chipped by a stonemason. So when they arrive on a pallet, each one of these stones, we take a stone hammer and you can see the chip marks in it, where we hit them in order to get this nice texture on this face. So it all looks, every single stone here has been hand chipped, and that could take anywhere from 2 to 3 days of the masons just sitting out in the front yard hand chipping stones so we can build this wall. This wall, the skeleton of this wall is built on a cinder block foundation. So below this is a poured concrete pad at the footing, which you can't see from here. And then we stack up cinder blocks. We fill every other core of the cinder blocks with concrete, and within those cores we add rebar for even greater reinforcement. This then becomes the veneer that we stick to the wall using a type S mortar. This is called a dry stack. In a dry stack, the goal is to not see mortar joints in between these different stones. There's another method where you actually do see the mortar joints, but a lot of times dry stack has become a very popular method of installing these walls because it allows for the stones to be set closer together and a little bit more of the architectural features to come out. It looks cool. I mean, that's basically what I'm saying. Underneath this cap, we've got these LED lights. These LED lights are spaced about every 6 feet underneath the cap of the wall, so you can imagine at nighttime, this just looks incredible. There's just this soft wash of light that comes down in this triangular pattern. So if the light begins at 6 inches wide, but by the time it washes down, it widens out at these angles. And then the next light over comes down at an angle. So you're just washing that wall. That's the effect that you're looking for. Along the right side of this, we've got a number of path lights over here, and they're spaced out about every 8 feet around the perimeter of this patio. And incidentally, this patio is a Belgard product. This is called Belgard Lafitte, and it comes in a 3-piece pattern. Here are the 3 pieces that are on the pallet. We've got a small rectangle right here. We have a square, a 6-inch by 6-inch square, 3-inch by 6-inch rectangle, and 6-inch by 9-inch rectangle. So these are the 3 pieces that make up the pattern. We've also used a sailor course. So you can see how we bordered this out with a sailor course. Hold on just a moment. Okay, we're back. I'm not sure if you caught that or not, but there were 3 officials from the Army Corps of Engineers. As I mentioned, this project was being done at a property on Lake Lanier. There was another company not related to us, I'm not the owner of the property, that was doing some tree work in the back. Man, when you get close to the Army Corps property line and you're doing any type of tree work, that can be a huge, huge problem. So when I saw him walk up, immediately I was like, not the owner, I'm not the guy doing the tree work, not me. So I had to pause there just for a moment to let them by. But let's get back to our video. Here we've done a sailor course. There's 2 different types of border courses, often referred to as a sailor course or a soldier course. Let me get out of the direct light here. A soldier course would be if I were to take these stones and turn them perpendicular. Now, in a sailor course, I would have to use all the same type of stone. Typically, it's going to be the rectangle stone. All the 6x9 rectangles, turn them this way, they would actually stick out another 3 inches, and it would make what's called a soldier course. In a sailor course, I'm going to run them parallel to this. So I'm going to have one continuous joint along here, but it's going to allow me to vary which stones I use. So I can use the large rectangle, the small rectangle, as well as the square, and I don't have to alternate them one by one, because if I do it in that ratio, you're actually going to run out of pavers on your palette, because there's more of the small rectangles and squares than there are of the large rectangles. So one of the common headaches that you run into when you're installing 3-piece paver patterns is using all of the material in the correct proportion, and it may be 2 to 1 or 3 to 1 on some of these. So for every large rectangle you use, you would use, say, 3 of the smaller rectangles or 2 of the squares. And you have to keep this in mind when you're running these jobs, because early on when we were running projects, and when I first learned these lessons the hard way, we would actually install what we thought was going to be a beautiful pattern, and we were going like square, large rectangle, small rectangle, small rectangle, square, and we'd get halfway done and we'd realize we're out of the large rectangles and we're only left with the small rectangles and the squares. We didn't use it in the right proportions, and we had to go back, pull our work up, and relay it and learn to use them in the right proportions. Simple mistake, but I don't want that to come back and bite anybody. One of the things that I'm very proud of in our work that you will notice that we have done here is this. We have used an engineered plastic edge restraint. Hopefully you guys can all see this. This is an engineered plastic edge restraint. This is the best edge restraint to use up against pavers. A lot of times you will see a troweled concrete edge, which looks hideous. This project has now been in place for approximately 3 years. If we had used troweled concrete, you would see it along here, number one, because you can already see it. Pine straw and mulch has enough difficulty staying up to the edge, but with that concrete, where it tapers off, it cracks all the time. So it may hold it here for a certain amount of time, but eventually it cracks. When it cracks, it compromises the strength of this paver edge. If this paver edge is not restrained properly, it will begin to creep out this way. And what happens then, this gap becomes wider, and that becomes weaker because it fills with sediment. As that gap becomes weaker, it begins to creep out that way. And where that problem translates to is to the next gap. And that gap will become bigger, and it will become weaker, and it will creep out that way. In projects that are 5 years old, 6 years old, or more, we come out and everything is now wavy because all these gaps have been compromised and gotten larger because this edge restraint began as concrete, and concrete does what concrete was intended to do. Concrete cracks. So don't use troweled concrete edges. They are a poor choice. Use these engineered plastic edge restraints. We secure our base material. So what is holding up these pavers is a 4-inch compacted crushed stone base, road base, aggregate, GAB, crusher run. It goes by a couple different names, but ultimately it's the same thing or very similar to DOT road base. And that base continues. It's underneath this dirt. It continues out about 6 inches beyond this. So this is secured in. It's an L-shaped piece of plastic. It's not straight. It goes down and then it goes over. And when it goes over, it has holes in it. And those holes take a spike. Within those holes, we use steel spikes. And you would think to yourself, Phil, why do you use steel spikes and not galvanized spikes? Galvanized aren't going to rust. We want to use steel spikes because we want them to rust. You can't rust a steel spike enough to where it will just completely decay and be non-existent. They will rust on the outside, but they're pretty thick diameter, probably about a 1/2 inch thick in diameter. So when they rust, they stick to that plastic and they bite into it like a nail. So that rust actually creates a weld, and they never move. When they rust underground, they form little burrs on them as they rust. So pulling out that spike becomes very difficult because now these burrs have kind of grown into the stone. If that spike were to be galvanized and it would never rust, I could come here 5 or 10 years later and just simply pull the spike out. So if they ever work their way loose, it's going to also compromise the edge on this edge restraint. We don't want that to happen. So let me walk you around to the rest of the project. In another video, I've talked in depth about how we address drainage, downspout drainage. We've got a number of surface basins here on the project. We did put in a channel drain at the door, so we wanted to make sure where this basement entry door was located that no water was able to get in. So just for good measure, because we do have an overhang here, we do have all the water addressed upstream of it here in this drain basin. We have a couple more drain basins up at the top. So for good measure, when in doubt, throw in a drain basin. Doesn't cost a whole lot of money. It's already under construction. You might as well do it. So we could have probably brought the pavers right up to the door without any noticeable impact in terms of water, but for peace of mind for everybody, for the fact that this is a vacation home and they're not going to be here all the time, so if there is a problem, they're not going to be it's not going to be brought to their attention immediately. We went ahead and put in a 4-inch channel drain just for that added security and protection against water. So this paver patio continues around, opens up, and becomes quite large once we get into the backyard. I mean, you can see this was a pretty sizable project. This deck originally had 4-inch support posts. Now, they wanted to add a sunroom on the top. They wanted to add an underdeck system. The posts were not spaced evenly, so they looked kind of sporadic, and a 4-inch post is just kind of weak in general. So we jacked up the deck temporarily, removed all of the posts, and we went ahead and went back in with all of these 6-inch wooden posts, which are much stronger, and they're going to allow to carry the load of the sunroom that was eventually added to the deck. In addition to that, there's an underdeck system that was added as part of the project, so we're not overly concerned with drainage here, but we did want to keep in mind one of the critical elements in where you're going to locate your paver patio. One of the first places you should look is the threshold of all the doors. So we take a look at the threshold of all of these doors and we notice that we must stay below this threshold. So this is one of the key points when we're determining what the elevation is at the outer length of the patio, and I'll turn the phone around here in just a minute and show you what that is. That's determined by the final elevation where we're going to be at this door. You can come out here, you can step down a step if you want to lower the elevation out there, but in this case it worked out very nicely. We're still below the threshold, probably about the minimum that we would want to be below a threshold. But we were able to make that call because, again, there's an underdeck system. So there's really no water, short of like a driving rain that was coming in this way. That would, I mean, it would have to be huge just to even push water up here. And again, we're still below the threshold. As you can see, this downspout that I'm standing very close to has been piped in. We have the correct connection. I'm not a big fan of taking a round pipe and shoving it on a rectangular gutter downspout discharge. I see that a lot. I think it's a little cheesy to do that. They actually make a fitting that works in here. This pipe goes directly underneath the patio and will discharge somewhere out there in the natural area. Again, it's been 3 years, so I don't exactly remember where that is. So we replaced all these deck posts. This patio, I think we gave it just a really, really cool shape. If you look at that, I love this whole serpentine shape. I love non-square edges, so it's just really nice and curved along its whole length. The pattern's beautiful. This gives you an idea of where I was standing. This is how the path goes up to the driveway. All in all, I think this turned out to be a pretty awesome project. I really, really like the shape of it. There was a concrete pad underneath this portion of the deck. This is for two reasons. There were two reasons we replaced all of these posts. Number one was to eliminate the concrete pad because the old posts were sitting on top of that concrete pad, and they, as I mentioned, they were 4-inch by 4-inch posts. We had the option, because this pad was 12 by 16 when we started, 16 feet wide, 12 feet deep, and we had the option to leave the pad and try to put our pavers for that portion over a pad and all the other pavers not on the pad. I hate that idea. They settle at a different rate. You will always see this faint line of where your pavers are sitting on top of a pad, and then it jacks with all your elevations out here. One of the things that if you have too much elevation fall off of the house, and let me give you, for reference, let me show you what that looks like. So there's our house, and here's the elevation where we're at. You can see it lines up beautifully with our grass. If there was too much fall off of the house, we would need to install a short little perimeter retaining wall. Well, the total outside length of this patio, which you can see ends out here, goes all the way around, and we have several hundred feet of linear edging. To put in a short retaining wall along this edge would add a substantial amount of cost without a substantial amount of value. So in order to avoid that, we began where we began at the threshold, and we regraded. So off of this, we have just a slight slope from here coming down. It probably drops about 3 inches over the course of about 3 feet. So about 1 inch per foot. Not too bad of a slope. I have seen it where these patios get built up and then you have a pretty steep fall off. In those situations, I don't think that looks very good. It's impossible to maintain that sloped edge, and it's very difficult to mow and manage. So in those instances, I recommend that you go ahead and build an outer perimeter retaining wall. But this one worked out just fine. Let me try to give you another overall shot of what all this looks like. That is a Bellegarde Lafitte 3-piece pattern with a matching sailor course using a plastic engineered edge restraint secured with steel, 10-inch steel spikes. We've used polymer sand in the joints. You can see it's a little dirty here. I mean, it has weathered 3 winters, so this is time for it to be cleaned. We're just coming out of winter now, so in the springtime we'll come back with an actual paver cleaner. We'll clean all the pavers, and this project is probably going to be getting sealed this year as well. We did very little work back here. This was all kind of overgrown jungle area. One of the things we did is we came in with some decorative ferns, because ferns do great in the heavy shade. There's an additional drain box back here right behind this small fire pit that gets water out and away from this area as well. But and in the area underneath this finished covered porch, we have another underdeck system. There's some ceiling fans that the homeowner is having installed this year with this area. But this kind of gives you an overview. The video began with, what do we do at Sarros Landscaping? Well, when that one bullet point on the side of our truck that says we do pavers, we do hardscapes. This is pavers, this is hardscapes, this is landscape lighting. This project has drainage and erosion control. We have plant material on this project. We did a new lawn for a portion of this project. We did an irrigation system. We did tree removal. trying to think if I've left anything off. We did not do any artificial turf on this project, but let me show you the front real quick. This was all overgrown, complete jungle landscaping. There's another huge tree right up here in the middle. So in addition, we replaced all of the shrubs on the front of the property. From the front corner here, we've got the nice evergreen here on the corner. We've got some laurels sitting there in the front. We've got some beautiful azaleas up here. These are encore azaleas that are sitting here on top of the retaining wall. So we're going to get 2, maybe even 3 blooms a year out of that. We've addressed the drainage in the front yard by adding this surface drain basin. This lawn is fescue, so it's about ready to be reseeded for the spring. Oh, we had some extra pavers left over. Here's kind of a cool little thing. We did have some pavers left over, so this is what we did with them. We created a new front entrance. This was just, there was a little bit of broken concrete and some stepping stones, so we took all that out and we decided to go ahead and create this front entrance. We've got lots of landscape lighting. This is probably a good 1/8 of a mile long driveway. It goes all the way up here to the end of the road. We have, I think, about 15 or 16 uplights looking up into these large trees. So at nighttime, this place just pops. There's lights everywhere. It's not like Friday night lights. It's not like looking at a football field. It's soft. It creates a nice ambience, a nice atmosphere for the area. So if you've ever wondered what we do at Sarros Landscaping, this is a great video to kind of capture the overview of what we do. Retaining walls, hardscapes, patios, lawns, grading, drainage, tree removal, irrigation, artificial turf, all those cool elements. If it's outside of your home and it needs to look beautiful, chances are Sarros Landscaping can help you with that type of work. Thank you for joining me. Have a great day.